There is a specific silence that exists only inside a bookstore on a rainy Tuesday. It isn't an empty silence. It is a heavy, expectant quiet, thick with the millions of words pressing against each other between cardboard covers. It smells of vanilla, binding glue, and the damp wool of coats drying by the door. For Elena Cross, this silence was not just a work environment. It was a fortress. She stood behind the counter of The Gilded Page, running her thumb along the edge of a worn paperback copy of Persuasion. Outside, the Seattle sky was a bruising shade of charcoal, dumping rain onto the pavement with a relentless, rhythmic drumming that vibrated against the plate glass windows. 3 years, she whispered to herself, a habit she had picked up living alone. 3 years of rain. In her previous life, the one that felt like a movie she had watched rather than a life, she had lived days were measured in billable hours, charity galas, and the terrifying precision of wedding planning spreadsheets. In that life, she was Elena the fiancée, Elena the future partner, Elena the good girl who was marrying Julian, the man who looked like he was minted in a factory that produced perfect. Husband's dot that Elena the bookseller measured, her days in cups of Earl Grey tea, and the number of people who stumbled in looking for shelter and left with a story. The bell above the door chimed a brassy, cheerful sound that cut through the gloom. A gust of cold, wet wind swept in, carrying a few dead leaves across the threshold. Mrs. Higgins, a regular who smelled permanently of lavender and mothballs, shuffled in, shaking a dripping umbrella with vigorous disregard for the floorboards. Terrible out there, Elena. Just terrible, Mrs. Higgins announced, her voice cracking like dry parchment. The gutters are overflowing on Pike Street. It's a deluge. Let me get you a towel, Mrs. H., Elena said, coming around the counter. She moved with a practiced ease, navigating the narrow labyrinths of shelves. The shop was small, cluttered, and chaotic, the exact opposite of the sterile, white-walled condos she had shared with Julian. She handed the towel to the older woman and went to the back to check the kettle. As she waited for the water to boil, she caught her reflection in the darkened window of the staff room. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a messy bun, strands escaping to curl around her ears in the humidity. Her apron was smudged with ink. She looked tired, perhaps, but she didn't look trapped. That was the victory. Every single day she unlocked the front door was a victory. She returned to the front to find Mrs. Higgins already critiquing the romance section. Too many shirtless Highlanders, Mrs. Higgins muttered. Not enough plot. Elena laughed. I think the shirtless Highlanders are the plot, Mrs. H. The day passed in a slow, comfortable blur. The rain never let up. Customers trickled in, announced students from the university looking for cheap classics, tourists escaping the downpour, and the lost souls who just needed a place to be quiet without being lonely. It was late afternoon when the atmosphere shifted. Elena was kneeling in the fiction aisle, specifically the CD section, fighting losing battle with a stack of hardcover thrillers that refused to stay upright. The metal bookend had bent, and every time she straightened the row, the books would slide like tectonic plates, threatening to collapse onto the floor. Stay put, she hissed at a copy of The Count of Monte Cristo. Or I am donating you to the bargain bin. I swear it. Threatening the merchandise? That's a bold sales strategy. The voice came from above her. It was deep, textured, and amused. It vibrated through the floorboards and straight up her spine. Elena jolted, nearly knocking the stack over with her elbow. She spun around on her heels, her heart doing a traitorous little flip in her chest. Looming above her was the man. She knew him. In the way you know the moon scene from a distance, part of the landscape, but untouched. He had been coming in for a month, always in the late afternoon, always alone. He never bought anything, just browsed the architecture and design section, treating the books with a reverence that bordered on religious. He was tall, wearing a canvas jacket the color of wet sand that had seen better days. His hair was dark, cut short but messy, as if he ran his hands through it constantly. But it was his eyes that arrested her. They were the color of sea glass, a sharp, clear green-blue that crinkled at the corners as he looked down at her. I wasn't threatening them, Elena managed, standing up. She brushed dust from her apron, suddenly conscious of the ink smudge on her cheek. I was ... not negotiating. The man chuckled. It was a warm sound, like wood settling in a fireplace. Let me help with the negotiations. He didn't wait for permission. He crouched down beside her, his movements fluid and easy for a man of his size. He didn't just shove the books back. He pulled the metal bookend out, inspected the bend, and with a casual flex of his wrist that made the tendons in his forearm jump, bent it back to a perfect 90-degree angle. He slid it back into place. The book slotted against it with a satisfying thud, solid, immovable. Structural integrity, he said, standing back up and offering her hand. It's all about the foundation. If the support is weak, the story falls apart. Elena stared at the hand. It was large, rough, the skin mapped with small white scars and calluses. It was a working man's hand. Julian's hands had been smooth, manicured. Smelling of expensive lotion out, she took it. His grip was firm but surprisingly gentle. His palm was warm and dry against her cold fingers. For a second, the ambient noise of the rain and the heater faded. It wasn't a lightning strike. It was something quieter. A click, like a door unlocking. Show off, she murmured, pulling her hand back a fraction of a second too late. Just a carpenter with an eye for straight lines, he countered, a crooked grin breaking across his face. It transformed him from brooding stranger to something dangerous, charming. I'm Caleb. Elena, she replied. The name felt different when she said it to him. Less like a label, more like an introduction to a person she was still figuring out. Well, Elena, Caleb said, glancing around the shop. You have a nice place here. Good bones. But your shelves in the back? The biography section? They're sagging about an inch in the center. You keep loading them up like that, you're going to have a biography avalanche by Christmas. Elena blinked. Are you critiquing my shelving? Consulting, he corrected, his eyes dancing. Pro bono. He tipped his head, a silent goodbye, and walked toward the door. He moved with a long, loping stride, confident but not hurried. Elena watched him go. She watched him until he disappeared into the gray curtain of the rain. Then she looked back down at the CD section. The books were standing perfectly straight, soldier-like. Supported by the metal he had bent with his bare hands, she touched the spine of the Count of Monte Cristo. Okay, she whispered to the empty aisle. Maybe he's allowed to stay. Chapter 2. The echo of White Tool that night. Elena couldn't sleep. Her apartment was a small studio above the bookstore. It was drafty, the plumbing groaned like a dying whale, and the view was of a brick wall. She loved it fiercely. She sat on her windowsill, wrapped in a quilt, watching the rain streak the glass. The encounter with Caleb played on a loop in her mind. Structural integrity ... it made her think of the wedding that never happened, 3 years ago. San Francisco, the ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel. It was supposed to be the event of the season. Her mother had cried when she saw the dress, a Vara One confection that cost more than a car. Julian had been perfect. He was a corporate lawyer on the partner track, with a jawline that could cut glass and a pedigree that opened doors. You're so lucky, Elle, her friends had chirped over mimosas. He's safe. He's solid. Safe. That word had haunted her. Julian was safe in the way a bank vault is safe, cold, impenetrable, controlled, She remembered the dinner. 2 weeks before the wedding, they were at a Michelin-starred restaurant, eating food that was too pretty to consume. Julian was talking about his 5-year plan. "We'll wait on kids until I make partner," he had said, slicing his steak with surgical precision. "Then we move to the suburbs. Palo Alto, maybe? Good schools. You can stop working at the gallery, focus on the house." He hadn't asked her. He had informed her. Elena had looked at him, really looked at him, and realized she was looking at a stranger. She didn't know what made him laugh until his stomach hurt. She didn't know what he feared at 3 a.m. She only knew his resume. The panic had started as a hum in her ears and grew into a roar. She was suffocating in the safety. She left the ring on the nightstand. She didn't write a note. She couldn't find the words that wouldn't sound like madness. She packed a single suitcase, took her savings, and drove north until the sky turned gray and the air smelled of pine and salt. She found Seattle. She found the Gilded Page. She found herself, but sometimes in the quiet of the night, the guilt would find her. She had hurt a good man. She had disappointed her family. She had run away. "Coward," a voice in her head would whisper. "Survivor," she would whisper back. She shook her head, clearing the memories. She wasn't that girl in the white dress anymore. She was the woman who ran a bookstore. She was the woman who had met a carpenter with sea glass eyes. She pulled the quilt tighter. The rain continued to fall. Washing the City cleaned out Chapter 3. Earl Grey and Sawdust Caleb returned 2 days later. It was Thursday. The shop was busier, filled with university students procrastinating on their midterms. Elena was behind the counter, ringing up a stack of graphic novels for a teenager with blue hair. When the bell chimed, she didn't look up immediately, but she felt it. The air in the shop seemed to shift, growing denser. Warmer. She handed the teenager their receipt and looked up. Caleb was standing by the new releases table. He wasn't looking at the books. He was looking at her. He was wearing a flannel shirt under the canvas jacket today. Sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms dusted with ... Was that sawdust? He walked up to the counter. He didn't smile, not the full crooked grin from before, but his eyes were bright. "You look like you need caffeine," he said. "No. Hello." No small talk. Elena blinked. "Excuse me? You're squinting. And you're tapping your pen against the counter. My mom used to do that when she was undercaffeinated." He reached into a paper bag he was carrying and pulled out 2 cups. "Black coffee," he said, placing one on his side of the counter. And ... He placed the second cup in front of her. "Earl Grey tea. 2 sugars. Dash of milk." Elena stared at the cup. "How did you know?" "I pay attention," he said simply. "Last week, you ordered it at the cafe down the street while I was in line behind you. You didn't see me." Elena felt a flush creep up her neck. "Stalker behavior, Caleb? Observant neighbor behavior, Elena?" He took a sip of his coffee. "There's a difference. Stalkers don't bring beverages." She took the cup. It was warm. "Thank you. I haven't had a break all day." "I can tell. You have that 'I hate the general public' look in your eyes." Elena laughed, surprised. "Isn't that obvious?" Loud and clear. He didn't leave. He leaned against the counter, sipping his coffee, watching the shop. "So," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady, "you're a carpenter?" "That's the official title. I restore old things. Houses, mostly. Victorians, craftsmen's. Places that people have given up on." That sounds ... romantic. Caleb snorted. "It sounds romantic until you're crawling through a crawl space filled with raccoon skeletons and dry rot. Then it's just work. Why do you do it?" He paused. His expression shifted, becoming thoughtful. I like the idea that nothing is too broken to be fixed. If the bones are good, you can save it. You just have to be willing to do the dirty work. He looked at her then, a gaze so direct it felt like he was touching her. Most people aren't willing to do the dirty work. They just want the shiny new thing. They want the prefab. The easy. Elena thought of Julian. The prefab life. I like old things, she said softly. They have stories, exactly. Caleb tapped the counter. Like this place. Built in 1920, original fur floors. You can see the wear patterns near the door where people have walked for 100 years. That's history. That's real. You really like wood, don't you? I understand it. It's honest. It doesn't lie to you. If it's weak, it breaks. If it's strong, it holds. People aren't like that, Elena said, almost to herself. No, Caleb agreed, his voice dropping an octave. People are tricky. People hide rot behind fresh paint. A silence stretched between them, but it wasn't awkward. It was charged. Elena felt a magnetic pull, an urge to lean across the counter and... What? Touch his arm? Ask him to stay. I have a job site, he said abruptly, straightening up. I should go. Oh, okay. Disappointment bloomed in her chest, sharp and sudden. But, he added, pausing, I'm working on a place in Queen Anne, big restoration. If you ever want to see what dry rot actually looks like. Elena smiled. An invitation to see mold? How can a girl resist? Caleb grinned, the crooked smile returning. I know how to woo a lady. See you around, Elena. He turned and walked out. Elena watched him go, clutching the warm cup of tea. See you, she whispered. Chapter 4. The leaking roof and the late-night November arrived, bringing windstorms that stripped the trees bare and turned the streets into rivers. The gilded page was holding up mostly, but the roof was a different story. It was a Tuesday night past closing. Elena was in the back office reconciling the monthly accounts when she heard the drip, drip, drip. She froze. That wasn't the rain outside. That was inside. She grabbed a bucket and ran out to the main. Floor.disaster.water was dripping from a dark stain on the ceiling, directly over the philosophy section. Specifically right onto Nietzsche. No, no, no. Elena cried, scrambling to move the table. She shoved the heavy display aside, groaning with the effort, and slid the bucket underneath, just as the drip turned into a steady trickle. She looked up at the ceiling helplessly. She was a bookseller, not a roofer. She rented the space, but her landlord was currently in Florida and famously unresponsive to anything that didn't involve a rent check. She needed help. She pulled out her phone. She didn't have many contacts in Seattle. Her employees were students. Then she remembered. A week ago, Caleb had left a business card on the counter. Caleb Vance, Restoration and Carpentry. She hesitated. It was 9 p.m. He was probably sleeping, or out, or with a girlfriend. She looked at the ceiling. The stain was spreading. She dialed the number. It rang twice. Vance. His voice was rough, deep, like he'd just woken up. Or maybe that was just his voice. Caleb. It's Elena, from the bookstore. A pause. Then a shift in tone. Alert. Elena. Is everything okay? Not really. Nietzsche is drowning. What? My roof. It's leaking. Right over the philosophy section. I don't know who else to call. I'm on my way. Caleb, you don't have to. I'm 10 minutes out. Don't touch anything electrical. The line went dead true to his word. 10 minutes later, headlights swept across the front windows. Caleb burst through the door, carrying a toolbox and a heavy-duty tarp. He was wearing a gray hoodie and jeans, looking like he'd just walked off a movie set about rugged heroes. He didn't waste time with greetings. He looked at the ceiling, looked at the bucket. Okay, he said. It's the flashing around the chimney, probably. Wind tore it up. Can you fix it? Tonight? No, it's pouring in pitch black. I'm not going up there to die. Elena's shoulders slumped. So I just let it flood? No, we divert it. He went to work. He moved with that same fluid efficiency she had seen before. He set up a ladder, climbed up, and used a staple gun to rig the tarp into a makeshift funnel, directing the water into a larger bin he'd brought in from his truck. It's ugly, he said, climbing down and wiping his hands on his jeans. But it'll hold until morning. I'll come back when it's light and patch the roof properly. Elena let out a breath she felt like she'd been holding for an hour. Thank you. I can pay you. Your emergency rate? Caleb looked at her. He was standing close. Too close. She could smell rain, sawdust, and something uniquely him like cedar and coffee. You're not paying me, Elena. I have to. You drove over here at night, ... I came for you, he said. The words hung in the air, heavy and undeniable. Not for the money. Elena's heart hammered against her ribs. Caleb ... I keep telling myself not to, he muttered, almost to himself. He reached out, his hand hovering near her face before he dropped it. I keep telling myself you're just the girl at the bookstore, but then you call, and I'm in the truck before I even think. Why? She whispered. Because, he said, his eyes searching hers. You look at me like I'm a person, not a tool, not a fix-it guy, just ... me. You are a person, she said, a small smile playing on her lips. A person who saved Nietzsche. He chuckled, the tension breaking slightly. God is dead, but his books are dry. He stepped back, creating a safe distance. I should go. I'll be back at 7 a.m. to fix the roof. Leave the door unlocked for me. I'll be here, she said. I know you will. He walked to the door. Before he left, he turned back. Elena? Yeah? Get some sleep. You worry too much. Structural integrity, she quoted back at him. I'm just worried about the foundation. I've got the foundation, he promised. You just take care of the stories. Chapter 5, Roots and Wings. The next morning, Elena woke to the sound of hammering dots. She dressed quickly and went downstairs. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a washed-out, pale blue sky. Caleb was already on the roof. She could hear his boots thudding against the shingles. She made coffee black for him, Earl Grey for her, and went outside. He was coming down the ladder. He looked tired, stubble darkening his jaw, but he smiled when he saw her. All patched up, he said. Replaced the flashing. Sealed the seams. Should be good for another decade. You're a magician. She handed him the coffee, just a carpenter. He took a long sip, closing his eyes. God, I needed that. They stood on the sidewalk, the morning city waking up around them. Buses hissed by. People walked dogs. So, Elena said, what happens now? Do I get a bell? No bell. Caleb ... Make me dinner. He interrupted. Elena froze. What? Make me dinner? That's the payment. I'm sick of takeout. I want, I don't know, something homemade. Something that didn't come in a cardboard box. I can do that, she said. I make a decent lasagna. Lasagna sounds perfect. Tonight? Tonight. He finished his coffee and handed her the empty cup. Their fingers brushed. The spark was there again, undeniable. 7 p.m. He asked, 7 p.m. He got into his truck, a battered Ford with Vance Restoration stenciled on the side. He rolled down the window. Elena? Yes? I'm looking forward to it. He drove off.